Hi, I'm Lauren. Introduced myself to one person. Great to have you. Are you getting some interesting insights, writing notes? Yeah, learning things. Good, great. Well, the session in here now is about the real power of influence. So influence is certainly a buzzword that we hear a lot in the wellness industry. One of the misconceptions I commonly hear is you can't be successful in the industry if you don't have hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers, and that's the perception of what influence really means. This session is really about broadening your perspective on what influence actually means in wellness. If any of you read the article on our website earlier this week or perhaps last week about the new register of wellness influencers that has just launched, it's just one example of many initiatives that are taking place now to ensure that when somebody positions themselves as an influencer or an expert in the wellness industry, that it is backed up by real expertise and real credibility and real qualification in a lot of cases. And so we've brought together a panel for this session that really focuses on that specific angle of influence. This session is not about getting as many followers as you can. It's not about, as brand owners in the room here, it's not about working with somebody who has X number of followers who can garner you X amount of reputation in the industry. It's about aligning yourself with people of real influence, of real expertise, of real insight in the industry. So we're going to explore what it really means to use that word influencer and how important the expertise angle to it is. We're also going to look at how brands can leverage the power of influence to reach new audiences and create more meaningful connections with their customers. And we're also going to look at how the influencer landscape is actually changing and shifting and what you need to consider in that respect for your own businesses. So I'm going to introduce the panel to you. Our first panelist is Chiara Quadranti. I hope I've pronounced that right, Chiara. She's the head of growth for Fiit. It's an app that some of you may have heard, read, or even used yourselves. It's a fitness app that lets you take interactive fitness classes with the most in-demand trainers from your own home. She leads growth initiatives, acquisition campaigns, and brand strategy. And prior to Fiit, she was the director of marketing at Welltodo, which is a Series C funded identity verification company. So sharing her insights with us today. Please join me in welcoming Chiara. Thanks. Our second panelist is Jewell. He's a talent manager for IxB Talent. He played professional rugby for 11 years before changing careers and finding himself in talent management. At IxB, Seb has a strong roster of very exciting and varied talent, including a powerful relationship which we'll explore momentarily with a leading global fitness brand. Please welcome Seb. And our final panelist is Rhiannon Lambert, a registered nutritionist and founder of Rhitrition. She founded Rhitrition, London's leading private nutrition clinic, is also a best-selling author of Rhitrition and a podcast host of Food for Thought. Her qualified approach to nutrition and dedication to sharing evidence-based advice has seen her work with some of the most influential people and is also the reason that she's on our panel today. Please welcome Rhiannon. So influence, guys, it's a hot word in the industry, but we want to go a little bit deeper, talk about what it actually means for a business owner in this space. Influencers obviously have played a role in perpetuating this message of wellness and how important it is to be well. But, you know, some, I suppose, have also been criticised for giving a certain reputation to the industry as well. In your experience, how do you think attitudes generally have shifted towards how influencers play a role in wellness, and what do you think is driving that? And perhaps we'll start with you, Chiara.
Sure. So I think there's been a growing realisation that Instagram is not real. And with that, a rise in popularity and influencers who show like the real side of things. Jessie King, Lawrence Price are really good examples of that. So I think that that's driven in large part by growing conversation around mental health and well-being, which we've seen in the last sort of 5 years, especially in London with initiatives of William, for example, people being just much more open about how social media is affecting them, and so yeah.
What about you, Seb?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest subject going on at the moment. I think we're lucky to have moved away from the stage where it's all about who you are and like the numbers that you have following you. I think the celebrity status of influencers has changed a lot, and brands now are starting to, and even the general public, starting to read into those more genuine people that actually have a message to talk about. I think we're still lucky to be in the world at the moment where people have had a talent or a skill and just talked like genuinely, and it's led to them being an influencer, rather than those people that are now kind of just doing it to become one, and they're doing all they can to produce content that they think just fits in the market. So I'd say that's probably the biggest shift that's going on at the moment.
Rhiannon, you've obviously carved out a career as a nutritionist, but also by virtue of your expertise have placed yourself in that influencer category as well. How, from your perspective, do you balance that credibility with influence, and how have you seen credibility grow in importance from that perspective?
Gosh, it's a very good question, because actually when I first became a nutritionist, so I have a first-class degree in nutrition and health, my master's degree, another master practitioner, and endless things. I'm still studying to this day. I've just completed my pre- and postnatal. So I'm very much, or I was very much, in the academic world. And suddenly when the platform, I discovered Instagram, I think it was in 2016. I met Lauren actually at that time when I discovered Instagram. We started together. And at that point, there wasn't really any credible voices on the platform. And it's still a very concerning area for me. And I didn't expect to ever be in a position where I would be up here on this stage now being called an influencer as the second side of my job. I think it's a progression that's happened very naturally, because I'm very cautious, and there's different governing bodies in the UK that regulate health professionals. I'm regulated by the Association for Nutrition. So if I say something that's a bit dodgy online, I could completely lose my job, be struck off the register, and lose the title registered nutritionist. So I have a duty of care, code of ethics and conduct to follow. When it comes to placing nutrition online, it's hard, and becoming an authoritative voice is difficult because one size doesn't fit all. So creating content, which is the social media aspect, is something I could spend hours doing. And I've definitely seen a huge rise, to answer your question, in the fact that people are going to the internet. I mean, 40% of teenagers, this is a study conducted by Sainsbury's last year in their polls, go to Instagram for advice from their favourite influencer rather than to their GP or their doctor, which is quite worrying. So I think from a health professional standpoint of view, from doctors, registered nutritionists, dietitians, we have to be there because we have to help people that are going on these platforms. We actually have a responsibility to have a face there now.
And there's, as Chiara said, there's sharing real life and my experience with wellness and what worked for me and what didn't. And then there's expertise as well. And that's the fine balance. But then, Chiara, coming back to Fiit strategy, you've obviously used influencers in that area of expertise around fitness to effectively launch the brand. Yeah. Can you share a little bit more about that strategy and how you identified the right types of influencers to work with and how that's paid off?
Yeah, definitely. So we work with 18 trainers who are also influencers, and they kind of play two roles for us. So the first is that they help us design, and also they lead all the workouts that you can find on the apps: yoga, cardio, Pilates, strength, and so on. But what they also do is promote Fiit through Instagram, and we found that to be really successful, mainly because, as I was saying, people go to Instagram for advice, for inspiration. Like, that's where they go to these days, and especially in fitness. And what's more, our trainers are credible sources. So that's kind of even more powerful, hearing about Fiit through a trainer rather than hearing it from us. And I think the third thing I'd say is that working with these influencers lets us be really, really targeted in terms of our audience, not in the way that kind of Facebook lets you do with a generic sort of tick box, but actually it lets you find people who are exactly the people who are right for you in terms of the kinds of fitness they like, and in terms of their intent. So a lot of these people, for example, people who follow Charlotte Holmes or Health Chef, they're people who are into fitness and who have a very high intent to want to find new ways to work out. So it's been really, really exciting for us.
That's okay. What I suppose I'm now distracted as well, but what is it that is your criteria, I suppose, when you say, you know, let's find a new credible influencer that we want to promote Fiit? What would the criteria be?
So I think you mentioned in your opening about followers. So that's the thing which obviously everyone gravitates towards, like how many followers does person have? And it is important, but alone it means relatively little. So we always accompany that with engagement. So engagement on the feed would be the number of likes if you take Instagram. But we actually predominantly use stories. So we look at Instagram stories, we look at the number of people who view a story and the number of people who swipe up. Because we find stories to be just the most effective channel for us. As you can have that direct call to action for people to swipe up and go to your website. So engagement is the thing that we really, and often you find people with smaller audiences actually have much bigger engagement. And the third thing we look at is brand affinity. So we have a mission, which is keep everybody moving, and we want to find people who really share that, because that's when it works really well for us, but also for them. So Fran Carson is a really great example. She's been working for 6 months. She's done 154 Fiit classes, real number. She does it every day, pretty much, before taking kids to school before breakfast. And that's really great to see, because all the content that she does is just so genuine, so authentic. And it's a word that's used quite a lot, authenticity, but I think when it's done really well, it works. And people know it's an ad, but they also know it's genuine, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. Seb, as well as sharing a little bit more about what you do with IxB, you've got this role as a talent manager. You represent a lot of fitness influencers. Have you spotted any significant ways in which businesses are working with influencers in terms of the results that they want, the strategy, the result that they want to get out of that partnership?
Yeah, definitely. I think we touched on, obviously, like analytics is obviously a major part, which has changed how most brands are working. Now there's more stats. It's kind of completely turned around and gone from, obviously, traditional media is TV adverts, magazines, billboards, and you don't see any ROI. But now that we're able to see stats, I think that's probably the biggest shift in brands really trying to like hone in on those influencers that hit their key target audiences. I think there's an onus on the talent themselves and the brand to make sure that it is an alignment. I think people start to see through now, especially in the world at the moment, those partnerships that just don't make sense. So we had a discussion before, it makes no sense to go and try and get someone to be an ambassador of Fiit who's a celebrity who has no association with fitness just because they've got a certain following. And I think that's probably the way that brands now are starting to take a bit more onus on themselves to do research before reaching out to a talent. Because A, it means that the talent realistically wants to work with them because they know something about them in the first place. But then also it means the whole process goes a lot smoother, and it means that it kind of works a lot better because the talent knows why the brand wants to work with them, and the messaging is very clear and it's very concise, and everyone gets the best out of it, rather than that kind of wild west of just like, here's my brand, do you want to work together? And then it just makes no sense for both parties. And then I guess going on to IxB talent, I might go on to answer another question as well here, but we, as Insanity Group, who is the kind of main company that I work for, which has been around for 21 years, manages, got TV presenters, radio broadcasters, musicians. We have a record label and moved into the digital space. We have a really good relationship with Barry's Bootcamp, and we found that their trainers were kind of carving their own name within the industry, and people were starting to come to them for advice, and brands were looking to work with them, but they were almost trying to like work with them and try and get there before anyone else did, to try and take them away from those deals that maybe, so say for example they've worked with a brand or posted about a brand for like the last couple of years, they'd be like, well, why don't you sign your life away for us for 2 years and we'll give you very little money? And obviously the influencers like, that sounds great, but then realistically what it then leads to and how it affects their market value is a huge impact. So we kind of realised that it made sense for us to partner with them and form what is our sister company, which is IxB Talent, to manage them as influencers away from their responsibilities and their roles as Barry's, as well as then look to accommodate and bring on other wellness and fitness talent, which we now have too, to try and sort of safeguard them against those kind of their career goals that maybe they wanted at the time, but they're very naive to it, and use our experience and our relationships through media and digital broadcasting on our Insanity side and help them over our IxB talent.
Yeah, and I think that partnership for me just showed to how forward-thinking Barry's were in the sense that instead of thinking, oh, our trainers are getting distracted by these opportunities, we want to keep them just focused on our brand and our initiatives and our strategy. It's sort of rather than fighting against it, it was building a platform that actually enabled and empowered them to take advantage of those other career opportunities in the context of their role there.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that that's obviously something that they also are kind of, we look to educate them on as well, because like you said, as a brand you can be very narrow-minded and be like, it's us against the rest.
Yeah.
And I think in the space that we're talking about, in the wellness space and the fitness space, it's so varied, there are so many voices, and you don't want to pigeonhole yourself and become very elitist and very like it's us against the rest. And yeah, it was very forward thinking, and I think obviously the relationship that we had with Barry's through our CEOs training at Barry's and having a very good relationship with Sandy and James, who are the masterminds behind Barry's in the UK, it just kind of made them realise, and also it takes away the responsibility from them of like, right, we're running a business here, we don't have that expertise, you guys do, so why don't we combine together and we can then make the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah. And building on that, Rhiannon, there's been this move of brands not just using influencers for PR or just to get a message out to their audiences, but actually as consultants and content creators. So I know you've done multiple projects now, whether that's with Deliveroo or I think you did a project with Itsu as well recently.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more.
Ping Pong as well.
Ping Pong.
Yeah,
So tell us about the demands from brands and that shift from not just promote my brand, but help us actually build a better product.
I think it's a really wonderful one, and I'm obviously in a very fortunate position where I'm getting now to use my nutritional expertise. Obviously, I can speak from this kind of bracket and portray them in a light that in the past I would have done and had no exposure with, and then a separate marketing company or PR company would have taken on the role of getting that campaign out there. Whereas this time I'm involved from the very beginning, the actual concept. Normally as an influencer, I think most people are pitched an idea and the product's already there and they go out and they sell it. Whereas for me, I actually get a role in creating it. And another good example, so we worked on Deliveroo's an ongoing campaign that we're doing a lot with, which is very exciting. So we have a mission to make takeaways healthier and more accessible. That's the goal, because if you live in London, obviously you've got access to everything, whereas the minute you leave, we don't, which is quite a problem. But Heck, I think, are a very good example for you all to be listening to. So Heck Sausages, as a company, I discovered before Instagram at a trade show. I think it's one of the shows that regularly takes place at the Excel Centre, and they were demoing their product, their chicken sausages. I actually thought, oh gosh, you know, my fiancé and people that eat the kind of unhealthy, in my eyes, I know everything in moderation, but come on, these pork sausages, let's make a switch to chicken. And this was before the plant-based movement as well. And I'd had such a long-term relationship with this brand, even up until now, that they then approached me last year saying, we have a vegan variety and we think this would be perfect for you. So they'd still had me in mind. And I then got to go to the factory, see the creation of this, know exactly what's going in it. And my name is now on the back of all the packs. So it's not just on my Instagram platforms or my YouTube or Twitter. This is actually on my, just checking you can all hear me, I'm moving my mic a little bit. It's actually now predominantly in the shop shelves. So I don't have to do the same type of marketing. It's like a subliminal message of I still cook with it. I use it every day. I've got it stocked in my house. Occasionally I might just share it. It's more organic. And I think that's lovely for me.
And so as far as kind of advice for brands, at what point do you think bringing in an expert in that product development stage is beneficial?
I think it really adds credibility to your brand, especially if you are looking, I mean, for me, for a nutrition product, I have government backing. Obviously, with what I say is in line with EU guidelines. I already know that I have to meet a certain criteria before you can put it on a packet. There's different claims that you can make on a packet compared to on TV, compared to online on the internet, on Instagram. There's different authorities that regulate those different platforms. So adding credibility means people will trust you. And one thing I'm really proud to have built on the Rhitrition platforms, if any of you ever need nutritional information, is trust, and a community where, from the bottom of my heart, I genuinely love what I do. And I think that then translates into the brand. And if you've got someone that's that passionate about your brand backing you up, it will have a much larger impact.
And are the brands that you're working with measuring that impact and seeing that translate into consumer trust?
It was incredible. I think the delivery is a great example because they hit a record amount of hits on their Nutritionist recommended tab in January, which we launched as a kind of trial period for the month of January to see how many people were actually interested in it. And that was only through my social media on top of their normal PR campaign. And then because of the people I network with, it spreads. It's like a viral kind of spread on social media, especially platforms like Instagram. So you can definitely up your sales and you can reach far more people in a more organic way. And like Chiara said, even Instagram stories, it doesn't have to be a main feed. In fact, more engagement comes from a story post and more views than from a fixed image.
Yeah, and Chiara, then going back to you, I suppose that's the power of kind of video and real interaction, and this realness and authenticity concept that you've mentioned is definitely part of the beauty of these campaigns, but also can be part of the challenge, because as you said before, people recognize that it's an ad, but they also believe the message in a way. How do you achieve that? How do you find that balance between this is a commercial and this is me using the product in real life and loving it?
So I think when I speak to an influencer, one of the first things I say is that you have to really, you have to either use it and like it or start using it and like it. Otherwise, this is not really going to work. And to make sure that the partnership is as authentic as possible, we're really flexible. We have a platform that allows that flexibility. So, for example, we're working with a micro influencer called Susie Chan, who's a runner. And so for her to talk about Fiit every day, talk about HIIT even every day doesn't really make any sense. So we're like, okay, cool, well, maybe we'll talk about other things. We'll talk about yoga, we can talk about Pilates, we can talk about strength stuff. So it's about finding, everyone has a different workout routine, and there's no point like just shoehorning a feature that you really want to talk about if it doesn't work. But I think the second thing that we're still kind of working on, the best approach. But it's we find that the best results don't come from just talking about products. So a lot of the kind of adverts you see will be like someone's like, here are some crisps that I really like, and like really
swipe up to buy.
So talking only goes so far. It's all about how can you actually add real value to the users. And we just launched these live readable classes on Monday, which is a subtle plug. But what's really great about those is that now an influencer can say, hey, come and work out with me. It's not just like, hey, look at this app and download it. It's actually come and do this workout with me next Thursday at 8 a.m. And so they're giving their users something valuable. And we actually, with Van Cotton, taken that even a step further, because she's actually filmed some of the workouts in the app. So there, she's really kind of responding to her users who really want to know like what she does, how she does yoga, how she's so flexible, and they can go and work out directly with her for free in Fiit. So obviously, it depends on the product that you've got, but if you've got any way to help, I guess, give your users more value than just, through getting an influencer to talk about your products, then that's, I guess, always a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the keys to business is adding more value than anybody else, right? And I think what's interesting about that as well is that the influencer gets value in the exchange as part of that. Yes. So this idea of come and work out with me to create an interactive experience with their followers is more, more than just here's a contract to sign for you to promote our product or proposition.
About, like, shifting from one-way conversation where you're like, here, buy this thing, to a two-way conversation where there's a dialogue between the two. So yeah, 100%. And Fiit is, a platform, as you say, for all of these ambassadors to get their brand out there to other people. So it's two ways.
Yeah. Seb, today brands really need to activate influencers in an interesting way to really cut through the noise. It is a competitive landscape. Everyone seems like an influencer these days, whether micro or macro or otherwise. What are the biggest roadblocks for businesses to consider in getting it right the first time?
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier on with kind of like research in the first place. I think obviously what Chiara and Rhiannon have talked about is brands have reached out to them with a history of like Hex sausages. They know that she's invested. So therefore, realistically, they're going to want to produce the best content possible, and making sure that people like the app and use the app and are very kind of accustomed to it. That's probably the biggest hurdle to get over. From a kind of contact relationship with brands and PRs and trying to work with our talent, there are a number of times where they come and say, so we want to work with your influencer, what can you do? And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense because you haven't told us the direction, we don't know what your results want to be. Is it a kind of an awareness piece? Is it a results piece? And therefore, 9 times out of 10, the content that's produced is going to be very flaky, it's not going to work, and therefore they're disappointed. The reaction from and the interaction engagement from the influencer isn't going to work very well, and the whole thing just sizzles right from the off.
So what would you say in putting together that brief would be the first 3 things that a brand would think about before they even think about approaching a talent agency?
I'd say the best ones that come through are, like I said, research is saying like, we'd love to work with X because we've seen this post, that post, another post. We love this sort of style, we love this sort of content. This is our brand, these are our key messages, and we feel that it fits with your brand. Interestingly enough, as Insanity as a company, we've just hired an analyst solely for our company that goes on the back end of our stats, the brand stats and the talent stats, and tries to match them up, because we're now finding that the market that we're in, there are so many people wanting to do all of the same things that it makes sense for us to speak to that brand and go like, either say, you know what, this is a perfect fit because their audience is 19 to 25, their UK is their highest region, London's their biggest city, their audience engage with sports, gaming, fashion, and that is exactly the same as your audience. Whereas, or vice versa, we go, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I think that's probably where the biggest hurdles come, is that brands look at numbers or look at, we want to associate ourselves with that talent, but it doesn't have any fit. And we discussed this before, if you don't have that allegiance or you don't have that kind of alignment, then it doesn't make any sense to start with.
Yeah. Rhiannon, there's definitely been a lack of regulation around influencers to date, but that is changing. There are some great initiatives. I'd love to hear from your perspective, how you think these types of developments will impact the industry positively and for brands as well.
Okay. There has been, I think everyone's probably seen, I don't know if I should even... No, a Kardashian-based post is probably the best example I can use as being something that perhaps is a bit irresponsible, could affect the health of people that are consuming this information. And it does have to change. And I think regulation is extremely important. I'm hoping that soon there's going to be enough pressure on the government, because it has to come from a government level. It's very nice that we now have this type of discussion here. But from my perspective as a health professional, it's not enough. And the ASA, so the Advertising Standards Authority, as I've said earlier, you can advertise something on Instagram that would never in a million years make it on TV. And that's because TV has stricter kind of, authority in terms of regulation. So how do we do it? I think that's the big question that no one quite has the answer for yet. Because even small petitions going around at the moment to put bloggers into a credible category, well, who's doing the defining criteria? Who is actually saying this person's okay and this person's not? What is it for? This Instagram and social media have a world of different categories, from health to fitness to beauty to fashion. There's so many different realms. How do we do it? So I'm calling for action from a health perspective, that we really have to do something about the types of products and the nutritional claims and things that people are anecdotally saying on the internet. I get a bit passionate about that one.
For sure. And also you see the direct consequence of it as well, which perhaps you can briefly
clinic.
Share. What is the result of misinformation or the perpetuation of a certain message, or this is healthy and this isn't, coming from someone who doesn't have the qualified experience?
So in our clinic, I have a team of registered dietitians, nutritionists, and we work very closely with a psychologist in the Rhitrition clinic on Harley Street. And we have 3 main areas: eating disorders, sports nutrition, weight management, and I'm going to be opening a fertility pre- and postnatal area too. But I see a huge impact on, I would say, ages 12, even younger. We've had come in for our paediatric dietitian up until, I would say, 50 or 60-year-olds, and I'm not even exaggerating, who have poor body image, low self-esteem, have tried products they've bought because their favourite influencer has bought it, and it can lead to terrible side effects: malnourishment, toxicity of certain supplements that people have been taking, because you can take too many supplements. Supplements in general shouldn't really be sold on Instagram. There's a lot of problems, and it can, at an extreme case, an example I had was somebody developed osteoporosis at the age of 18, which is terribly sad. And that was as a result of following someone that was trying to heal eating disorders online, who obviously had no qualifications or experience, and it was a very anecdotal journey. So we do, it's a very serious kind of topic, but we do really have to start. I think content creators have a responsibility with the content they put out, and us as consumers have a responsibility to start really having a look at who is putting out the information.
And then ultimately the third responsibility lies with the brand, right?
100%.
They are taking responsibility for that. In terms of measuring success of working with influencers, Chiara, can you share a bit more with us about how Fiit actually measures the results? So is it sales? Is it engagement? Is it something else? What is it that for you guys says this trainer was a good choice for us, this was a good influencer for us to work with?
Yeah, we were talking about this before. Yeah. It's a touchy subject, I think, in some ways, because brands, especially startups, want ROI, and influencers don't necessarily want to be held to account. So it's a touchy subject. But at Fiit, to be transparent, we look primarily at our premium sales, which are really easily trackable because...
And by premium, sorry, you mean from going from the free version to upgrading to premium?
It could be either. So we have a model like Spotify, where you can have a free version on the page, and it's whether it's an upgrade or a direct premium sale.
Yeah.
And that's really easy to track because we have an affiliate link for all of our ambassadors. So we can easily track any purchases we made. So we obviously look at that primarily, but we do have other metrics as well. So we look at free signups, which are very valuable too. We look at engagement. So with this new model of come work out with me, how many people have actually gone to work out with that person and use the app. And then actually a much softer one, which is really important, is the ease of collaboration. So we work with a whole host of trainers, ambassadors, different kinds of influencers, and depending on the agent and the influencer, it might be easier or harder. And we find that obviously where we have the best, most fruitful results in terms of ROI is also where we have the best relationships with the agent and with the influencer. So I think that's something that's not to be kind of completely ignored. And then finally, the final point is brand awareness. So actually, someone earlier was like, "Oh, is Fiit the app that sponsors Happy Place?" And I've had so many people ask me that, and actually, we're speaking to a new ambassador who really wants to work with us because she knows we work with her often. So, I think that one is really hard in a startup to, I guess, it's very hard to measure and it's very hard to quantify. So it's hard to justify spend, but it is 100% it's 50% of what these influencers bring back is awareness, the credibility, and so on. So, yeah.
I suppose over time too, you're starting to see some of the patterns of conversion and how you can improve that with certain aspects of how you work with trainers as well.
100%. So we were discussing that as well, and I think the ultimate place we want to get to is where we have a really accurate model based on this number of followers, the engagement levels that they have. We'll be able to predict how many sales we can generate, and then we will be able to guarantee a certain retainer for that ambassador. So we get to this place which is really great for us because we know that we're getting return, but also the ambassador has complete kind of security. And so we're constantly refining these models, and it does take a lot of testing and a lot of slight leaps of faith at the beginning on both sides.
Yeah.
Hopefully gets this
So Seb, in terms of kind of that subject of ROI, every brand wants to come to you and say, Seb, can you guarantee me this outcome of sales or conversion or whatever it might be? How do you work with clients to sort of safeguard, especially for a startup in the room that says, I want to spend this much on influencer marketing? What can you offer me? How clear is your sort of brand promise from that perspective?
Yeah, I think we would never commit to a partnership on we have to deliver X amount of sales or X amount of reach impressions, because I think that's a very hard world to live by. I think especially with Instagram being controlled by the algorithm, you're never guaranteed a certain amount of likes or a certain amount of reach and impressions, and I think it just leads to a very stressful relationship straight off the bat. However, due to analytics, you can share previous results, so you can say we can't guarantee this, but if you look at our past 5 posts or 20 posts or 100 posts, this is our average reach, this is our average amount of likes, this is the amount of swipe ups that they normally get that clicks through to sales, etc. And so you kind of earn the trust of the brand that way. And so they have their kind of expectations from that base rather than from, right, we must see this. And I think the biggest frustration from a manager in that essence is that 5 years ago they would happily throw tens of thousands of pounds at a billboard, at a TV advert, where you had no idea. You can't measure anything. And now they can measure it. They are on you to guarantee a certain amount of results. And it's just trying to strike that balance. But I think as much of a Wild West that Instagram is, it's everyone's starting to kind of level out and realise. I think the fitness and wellness space is even more of a Wild West, going back on the credibility element, is if you want to make sure that you do get those sales and ROI, are you better off going with a name, or are you better off going with a micro-influencer and it's just making sure that they know what they want to achieve from it. And that's something that we try to establish early on. Is this an awareness piece or is this an ROI piece? And you can kind of gauge that in the first sort of couple of emails, because they want as many stats as possible when it's ROI, but they're more open for creative when it's an awareness piece. So.
Yeah, and I think that idea of micro-influencers is so interesting, because there are those sort of big name influencers that are constantly advertising for products and services and to the extent that it's quite numbing for an audience. And on the flip side of that, you have someone who is really engaged with their audience, maybe has fewer followers, but can actually deliver a higher return. Yeah,
well, we talked again about this before, not naming who, but there's our brand approached us the other day and we quoted, and they came back and said, we worked with someone last week that had 1.7 million followers. This person only has 300,000, but the price you quoted was the same. And then you look at their page and they had 3,000 likes. So that's 0.1% engagement. And you then go back and say why. That shows you the lack of awareness and knowledge of the brand. And I think micro-influencers have a very important place to play, because they're micro-influenced from the sense that you follow them for their content. I think celebrities you follow because of their name, so realistically you don't really care what they're saying. To be totally honest, like, you're more likely to just swipe those bigger names. Like, you don't follow Justin Bieber and really like look at his caption and care about what he's doing. You're just like, oh, this is Justin Bieber. Whereas you go and follow an influencer that you really believe in, and you go and do their workouts and you go to their training sessions because you want to know what they're saying, and those are the people to buy into, and those are the people that are on the app. And Rhiannon, like, there's a knowledge there, that there's, and I think she's a prime example of the very few people in this world that actually have that skill outside of Instagram, and that Instagram has just been another platform to share it, which is why people invest so highly in it.
Yeah,
whereas
absolutely.
You don't have that now with people wanting just to become an influencer.
Yeah, for sure. Rhiannon, what do you think the future of influencer marketing looks like from that perspective? I guess, are you kind of noticing any trends or ways in which businesses are really harnessing the power of your platform?
I can 100% say that I have seen such a huge growth in the last year of brands approaching me, especially from the health kind of wellness industry. It is completely booming. And in terms of using influencers, like Seb said, it is all about not going for your Love Island star, let's say, and going for your micro-influencer who actually is fully invested and isn't just in it for the cash, essentially. They also love their job. They are fully invested. So it's not going anywhere. It's getting bigger and bigger. And I see the world, especially of nutrition and health, only becoming larger. I mean, I'm in a very interesting situation, as Seb has said, where I think I am the only registered nutritionist in the UK with over 150,000 followers on Instagram. I'm in a very rare situation where I can only see that there will be more and more health professionals wanting to build platforms. So it's exciting for any brands in the room that want to work with actual professionals, because I think they're all going to be on social media. Give them a bit of time to build up, but they'll all be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I throw it out to you guys to ask a couple of questions, Chiara, today consumers really care about the value of community, companies that support and are a bit more selective about the brands or influencers they choose to align themselves with. Does that feed into kind of your strategy and how you work with influencers in terms of aligning values and kind of being values-led rather than numbers-led?
Yes, definitely. And I think there is a very clear dichotomy on Instagram when it comes to fitness. You have those who talk about functional fitness and what your body can do, and we have those that talk about and show what your body looks like. And they're two very different paths. And often the ones who focus on the aesthetics have much larger followings, are very popular, maybe not so much engagement, but definitely like the big names. So it could be tempting for us to just be like, well, we know this works, let's just go with this person because this is going to be, quick wins. So we do have those debates, and it's not always that easy, but we do try and kind of always make sure we're focusing on really kind of being true to our mission, which is to keep everybody moving. We see exercise as something that's important for physical and mental health. So we don't really do the before and afters. We don't talk about calories. So we're always like, when in doubt, trying to kind of go back to our mission. And because we know that although we might get a quick win by working with a very large influencer who's all about the looks, it's not going to work in the long term for brands.
Yeah, sorry, I just think that's really important as well from a brand's point of view, is those longer partnerships. I think that nowadays people are really starting to see through those throwaway 1 or 2 posts and trying to get a quick win, and it's really important now to the kind of buzzwords of authentic and organic, just making sure that you do work with those people that you know realistically are going to promote the product for a long time, and it makes sense for them to be associated with it for a long time, rather than the kind of the red flag of just like, we want one-off post and then that's it.
And then wonder why it doesn't
react. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, questions from the audience for our panel. We might take 1 or possibly 2. I'm constantly stretching the schedule. Has anyone got any questions? No? Yes? Down the front here? You can bring the mic, thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question for you, Chiara. In terms of scalability with Fiit, obviously at the moment you're based on a lot of influencers who are in London and that we can see in the London gyms. How are you seeing the growth of the company in the global markets?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so the good thing with influencers is that they are very, very scalable. Like, that's a model that works in one country, you can replicate it in another country very easily. For the moment, we're looking at how we can replicate it in the UK. Just because we're not planning to go to any other markets just yet. So we are looking to kind of expand out of the London market. We're looking at the influencers in the other kind of big hubs, because actually the majority of our users aren't from London. The reason why a lot of them use Fiit is because they're not in a big city, don't have access to various bootcamp or any of the other boutiques. And so we're working with an Irish influencer called Quadranti. We've got a couple of other micro-influencers kind of cast around technical now.
We will call it time, but I would love for you to join me in thanking our 3 incredible panelists for their insights. Thank you, guys.